How do we rediscover our sense of love and our sense of feeling when we're healing ourselves? I want to talk about this from the context of healing addiction, which is a kind of spiritual sickness by which our world shrinks. Our world shrinks around this narrow pursuit of desire and gratification, instant gratification, and it's a very empty pleasure that is attained, a fleeting pleasure that really leaves us feeling more empty than before. However, because our mind has come to associate the addiction with a sense of fleeting freedom, a fleeting relief, we feel as though the addiction is the solution to that emptiness, where in fact, when you zoom out and look at it from a more detached, more clarified gaze, a more truthful gaze, you see that the addiction is in fact contributing to your emptiness, to your lack of feeling, to your depression. Whilst in the moment, for a short time, it feels like relief. It feels like it's medicating those problems. When you zoom out and can look at it from the God's eye view, it is in fact spiraling you deeper and deeper. And this is a very difficult thing because the addict, the person suffering from addiction, in the thick of it, they just want relief in that moment. And they know one thing, or they feel it is one thing that will give them that moment of relief, because they are ultimately avoiding pain. And they're trying to find a way of remedying that pain, or remedying that boredom. It can start with boredom, but as you spiral in addiction, eventually it becomes pain itself that you are remedying. One of the most central ways of addressing addiction is to find a more enlightened, a more long-lasting, a more healthy way of dealing with pain, with dealing with grief. Addiction allows us to turn away from the world, to turn away from ourselves, and to just sort of indulge in this little game, the game of addiction, where you're chasing and chasing and chasing, and it's like it feels fun. It feels fun in the moment. It feels like you've really found that thing that you've been longing to find. You found that childlike play, particularly in the case of certain drugs, and then you indulge in it if you're particularly sensitive to it. And if you have nothing else to really enjoy, addiction can seem a blessing, or a curse that is disguised as a blessing, really. Addiction always disguises itself as a blessing, as something fun, as something enjoyable. And that's how it really seduces you in. So how do we resist this seduction of the mind, of the psyche? The only way to resist it is to cultivate clarity and awareness. It's to see the seduction for what it is. It's kind of like how, fake breasts, for instance, I don't know why I'm thinking of this example, but it's coming out. It's kind of like how they, from a certain perspective, it looks good, it looks nice. However, when you really get up close and personal with it, not that I've ever been in that situation, but I'm just, never mind. But when you feel it, it doesn't feel good. It feels unnatural. It feels unnourishing. It's like how, sweets, candy, if you're American. These sweets, they're designed in such a way to tickle our ancestral fruit berry picking genes, with all the vibrant colors and all the vibrant sweet tastes. And it, feels good in the moment when you're eating it, but there's no nourishment there. In fact, it's actually poisoning you. in a profound way. And that's the way of seeing through the veil of ignorance that addiction stirs in us. It seduces us with something that looks good on the surface, that feels good on the surface. However, when we can see through that immediate feeling into the actual depth of the experience, then it will sicken us, really. And often when we begin to heal from addiction, after many months and years, we look back and we're filled with this sense of almost disgust for how did we find ourselves in that position where we were doing certain things, where we were totally enslaved by our impulses, we're totally out of control and unable to say no, unable to inhibit that self-destructive aspect of ourselves in order to prioritize something more meaningful, that is our health and our well-being. We have to understand ourselves at that time as someone who is in pain and they're trying to find a way of escaping that pain, finding relief, and they're trying all sorts of methods and it seems as though nothing works. And when nothing works, or when you believe yourself that nothing works, then you will find the most comfortable solution, the easiest solution. The difficult solution to addiction is introspection. It's confronting that which you repress, that which you are ignoring, with the essential root of your pain. Confronting that reveals who you are, nakedly and honestly. And this is scary for some. This is why so many people choose to live unconsciously, because they are scared of what they will see if they finally saw clearly for the first time in their lives. But it is through seeing truth that we can eventually cultivate an authentic form of bliss. Any form of happiness or bliss that is rooted in ignorance or illusion is not authentic. It's not real. It's fake. It's a bliss that is built on sand, and eventually that sand will disperse. So we have to be willing to really stare into our depths, to stare into our traumas, to unveil them, to understand what we are running away from. And if we can pull on that thread and not be utterly destroyed by what we see and what we feel, if we can in fact learn to love ourselves and accept ourselves, even with our so-called flaws, then we are deep into the process of healing. The deepest forms of healing originate in silence and rest and solitude often. If we can still the mind and silence the mind, then we can really draw out our own internal healing faculties. Much of our diseases come from excessive activity, by constantly ruminating in our minds and also constantly doing stuff with our bodies. We replenish ourselves of our energy because, well, we live in a very go, go, go kind of culture where constant, perpetual activity is believed to be required in order to sustain oneself. This is why we live in a culture where work is so valorized, where if you're overworking, you're seen as doing something good. If you're neglecting sleep in favor of work, you're a truly conscientious and hardworking individual. And there's nothing wrong with being hardworking. It is regarded as valuable for a reason, because it shows that you're a very dependable person. But when we work to the extent of sacrificing our health and our mind and our well-being, then we're losing sight of the real value of work. work should be a loving act, not a self-destructive act. So what do we do with that?